From your breaking news and weather authority, this is 13 Wham News at 6, now in high definition.
Good evening. I'm Doug Embledge, and Don Alhart's going to join us from Attica in just a moment. But first, a breaking news alert. Emergency crews remain on the scene of an explosion and fire at a business in Mumford in southwestern Monroe County. This happened around 3 o'clock on Main Street at the Burnwell Gas Company. One person injured. Homes and businesses have been evacuated in a half-mile radius around the scene where tanks were exploding onto the street. 13 Wham's Angela Hong is live at the scene and has the latest for us. I know that we just got briefed with some new information. Angela?
That's right, Doug. We do have some new information. Well, first of all, the condition of that man, we found out that he had suffered burns to his face and to his arms, but his injuries are said to be non-life-threatening at this point. We learned that from the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and also the Mumford Fire Department here. Now, the state trooper on scene said that neighbors around Mumford had smelled gas in the air before they saw and heard the explosion, and we heard that the property had about 19,000 gallons of propane fuel on site. And some of those tanks, as you said, had exploded out onto the streets. And this area now on Main Street is fairly densely populated, and several people witnessed the explosion themselves.
Well, I was inside with the kids, and I just heard a big boom, a big ripple of energy just came right through the house. And it started shaking everything. Then there was another one right after that, and another one came out. I looked, and I seen the black smoke coming up.
Now, we learned that 24 fire companies were on site today trying to battle these flames, and we're told that the fire is mostly under control. They're trying to control flames coming out of 1,000-gallon tank that's still burning right now, and they say the fire officials will still be here about 3 hours later trying to keep everything under control, keep the tanks cool, dousing it with water. And one problem we're told that they had was finding enough water to control this fire. They had to pull water from nearby creeks, and we're told that much of this building is completely destroyed. That's what Rachel Barnett, who is on the scene right now, that's what she tells us. And we're told also that fire officials in this area have been preparing for a fire like this for several years now, because they knew the danger of having a propane plant so close to residents and businesses on Main Street. And we will bring you more information as they become available. Doug?
All right, Angela, and again, the one person hurt was an employee who was at or near the building, and non-life-threatening injuries is what we're being told at this point. All right, Angela Hong reporting from Mumford today, and we'll keep you up to date on that. We've received a few photos from viewers of the explosion scene, and here they are. You can see those flames, bright as can be, and then the black smoke as well. Firefighters on the scene dealing with today, a hot day, a windy day as well. And really, just at first blush, an extraordinary job of keeping those flames contained to the Burnwell property. And now we turn it over to Don Alhart with coverage of the 40th anniversary of the end of the Attica prison uprising.
We remember 40 years ago this very day, the retaking of Attica State Prison after a bloody uprising over a list of prisoner grievances. 40 years ago this very week, that I would stand outside those prison walls and say,
"This is Don Alhart reporting from Attica."
And this is Don Alhart reporting from Attica today. 40 years later, 40 years as we look back and remember the events that happened here at this prison. 40 years ago that families were affected by what happened behind those walls. Their lives forever changed. It began the morning of September 9th. When Officer William Quinn was assaulted as prisoners were escorted to their cells after breakfast. Within a short time, prisoners had gained control of the D yard, 2 tunnels, and the central control room, taking officers and civilians as hostages. Over the next few days, they would unsuccessfully negotiate a list of demands to improve their conditions. Overcrowding, for one, and the fact they were allowed only 1 shower per week and 1 roll of toilet paper per person per month. Minister Ray Scott, who was involved in Rochester's Fight organization, was involved in those talks, as was famed civil rights lawyer William Kunstler. The talks finally broke down, especially after then Governor Nelson Rockefeller refused to come to the prison and try to calm the riot. Finally, on Monday morning, September 13th, 1971, the helicopter flew above the yard, dropping tear gas. State troopers would open fire, and when the air had cleared and the prison was retaken, we would learn that 10 prison guards and 29 inmates had been killed. Autopsies conducted by our medical examiner, Dr. John Edlund, would confirm the hostages had died from gunshot wounds, except for William Quinn, who died in the hospital of wounds from that initial assault with which it all began. In a State Commission report, it would be recorded as the bloodiest one-day encounter between Americans since the Civil War. And here we stand, 40 years later, remembering what happened that day. You can look behind me now, some of those that were at the various memorial services, 2 memorial services here today, and we do have some footage of that, showing you what took place, some music, some prayers, some memories from those who were involved in this day. And one of those that was involved was the niece of William Quinn, that first guard that we talked about that was killed that day. Patrice Walsh had a chance to talk to not only that family. In fact, we're listening right now. Listen just a little bit to her singing.
I am strong, Walter, you raise me up.
And they were beautiful. And there is the niece. Patrice Walsh joining me now. I know you had a chance to talk to the Quinn family a little bit and share some of their memories of this day.
What memories they have. Dee Quinn Miller, just 5 years old when her father William was killed inside Attica, the first corrections officer killed, beaten by inmates on the first day after they overtook the prison.
A few memories, you know, not a lot.
Dee Quinn Miller says her memories of her father are like snapshots.
I remember him coming home. I remember what his uniform used to look like.
Quinn Miller's father was killed inside an area in the prison known as Times Square, a central hub of the facility. For the first time in a few years, she went inside Attica this year and saw the place where her father was killed. She said it brought her to tears.
After the inmates broke through the gate and left, you know, the gate essentially was my father's protection, and the gate came down and it left him defenseless, and he was beaten very badly.
2 inmates carried William Quinn on a mattress to the administration building. It would be hours before he was taken to the hospital. William Quinn died on September 11th, 1971. He was just 28 years old.
I was given like this story, and it fit, you know, it fit right in the box, and that's, but I always knew that there was more. I just didn't know how much more.
She started the Forgotten Victims of Attica to learn more answers.
Not just my dad, but 10 other dads.
And would your father want to know the truth, do you think?
Mm-hmm. I do.
The group asked for 5 things from the state, beginning with an apology, which Quinn Miller says they never got. They did get permission to hold an annual memorial service, but did not get counseling or access to sealed records, Quinn Miller says, tell the real story.
There are family members who want to know what's in there. There are people who want to know the truth of what happened.
The state awarded 50 families a $12 million settlement, but Quinn Miller says money was never the issue.
It's easier to pay people off because maybe they'll be quiet and go away.
She says she will never go away.
I think part of healing is knowing.
And you know, we talked about the memorial service here. It's just wrapping up. People from all over the country, California, Texas, Florida. We just talked to a former hostage from Florida, tears in his eyes as he described why he had to be here. He worked with William Quinn, both of them in their 20s. He doesn't know Don why he survived and William didn't, but he said, I have to be here every year. It's in his heart to remember like this.
And as you stand here today and look at the faces of those, you can certainly understand all that they have gone through. When we come back, we're going to hear from a hostage who says that an inmate saved his life, not once, but twice during that uprising. And in the end, he returned the faith. Well, as we've told you, there were two services here on the grounds of Attica today as we mark the 40th anniversary of the day that the prison was retaken. First, the Forgotten Victims of Attica held their memorial service. We had some music, we had prayers, we had some political statements, quite frankly, talking about the need to release more information of what took place that day that the prison was retaken. A short while ago, there was a second service, the bagpipes and a gun salute as the guards that were killed that day were remembered. Important to point out, there were 10 guards killed that day, 29 inmates, 43 in all when you look back and remember all of those who died as a result of what happened. I'm going to bring Jane Flash in here now because you've had a chance to talk to one of the prison guards who really, I think, has probably the most emotional story, if there is one, and I'm sure they're all emotional, but his, when you hear him tell it, is very compelling.
He defends the man who defended him, and from the outside here, Don, it seemed pretty clear at the beginning. The rioting inmates were the aggressors, the hostages, the guards who were taken hostage were the victims in all of this, but that changed shortly after the initial takeover. Hostage Michael Smith says the man who saved his life twice during all of this was an inmate.
Our wrists were bound, our ankles were bound, and we were blindfolded.
Taken hostage by rioting inmates, Michael Smith's first thought was gratitude for the two prisoners who rose above the mob to save his life.
I was on the floor being beaten and kicked, and two inmates came to my protection, covered my body with theirs in sort of a spread eagle fashion, and told the rioting inmates to leave me alone.
It began an unusual partnership between a blindfolded 22-year-old hostage and an inmate named Don Noble, who would become his protector.
Initially, I was optimistic that it could come to a peaceful resolution.
But then guard Bill Quinn, beaten in the takeover, died.
Everybody got a gas mask.
Troopers prepared to crack down. Tensions grew. With a shootout looming, inmate and hostage made a pact.
That if either one of us made it through this thing alive, that we'd get in touch with the other's family and express their last thoughts, the other's last thoughts, and their love.
As a last-ditch effort for amnesty, inmates selected 8 hostages to be executed. Mike would die at the hands of the inmate who earlier saved his life.
I told Don that I was sorry it had to come to this, and he expressed the same to me. I also asked Don that when the time came, if I was to be executed, that I didn't want to suffer. And Don promised me that I wouldn't suffer.
Before that could happen, troopers opened fire. Inmate Nobles pulled Mike Smith out of the way. In the aftermath of the carnage, Smith, who had been shot 5 times, found himself staring down the rifle of a state trooper.
He said, if you move, blow your head off. And the officer reached down under the barrel of the trooper's gun, pushed it up in the air and said, don't shoot, he's one of ours.
Mike regularly shares this story to educate people about the truth. The inmates did not kill their hostages.
The inmates didn't have guns, so the retaking force had to be doing all the shooting.
Now, when all of the firing stopped, Mike Smith actually stopped troopers from shooting that inmate, Don Noble. Today, Mr. Smith says he has no animosity toward the inmates or even toward the troopers who shot him. However, he is pretty angry with New York State for what he calls a cover-up.
All right. Hey, thank you, Jane. Well, there's other news, of course, this day. We have that explosion at the Burnwell Company to tell you about. Doug Embledge back with more of that, plus weather and sports in just a moment.
We are going to update again our breaking news from Mumford. Emergency crews still on the scene of an explosion at a building there. It happened around 3 o'clock on Main Street at the Burnwell Gas Company. That is a propane company. Dozens of fire companies are still on the scene. There are still some large clouds of black smoke, although fire has subsided some. One man, an employee in the building, ended up at Strong with burns to face and arms. To his face and arms, we're told his injuries are not considered life-threatening.
Now your planning forecast from the 13 Wham Weather Authority.
Well, did you enjoy summer? We're, I guess, trying to be funny about it, but today is probably the last day of the really warm weather. We got up to 83 through the afternoon, but you can see the clouds have moved in. Temperature now down to 79 degrees. Winds have been picking up most of the day, and that's in advance of a cold front, and we can see the signs of this cold front. This is the focal point for a lot of these showers and thunderstorms, and you can see now we're starting to get a lot of lightning strikes. Not necessarily widespread, but you can see pockets of this rain developing now just outside of Attica and then extending down towards Buffalo, towards Hamburg. And you can see these showers and thunder showers extend up towards Batavia. Now coming very close to the Brockport area. No signs of any lightning strikes up this way. And then take a look over here on the east side of town. A little renegade shower now just outside of Macedon. That is moving to the northeast. So you want to keep the umbrella handy at least for the next couple of hours as these storms begin to roll through. Now, I don't think we're going to find anything severe, but certainly a couple of lightning strikes, a heavy downpour, even some small hail will be a possibility as we go through the evening. And then we start to clear things out very nicely as we go through the day tomorrow. Check out our weather. Now, the front will have moved through, so the temperatures are going to cool down. We'll start out in the 50s. By lunchtime, we're in the 60s, and you can see we're not going to be in the 80s tomorrow. I think we're going to struggle to get up to about 70 through the afternoon, but we should find at least a fair amount of sunshine. Now, the issue is this is just one front in a series of fronts. The second front's going to be coming through. This is going to be tomorrow night, and this is going to be the really cool weather. Yeah, temperatures are going to drop quite a bit as we go through the end of the week. You've heard us talking about it, and I think by Thursday and Friday, we don't get out of the 50s, but much better news heading into the weekend. So through this evening, a couple of showers, maybe a strong thunderstorm, at least over the next couple of hours, and then drying out later tonight. Temperature is going to be heading down through the 60s. Tomorrow, noticeably cooler, but it should be pleasant. I think a fair amount of sunshine through the afternoon, temperature around 70. And then we get into that October-like weather for Thursday, for Friday. We're going to get some rain, certainly on Thursday, maybe a lake effect rain shower early on Friday, if you can believe that. But then it all clears out. Look at the weekend. Saturday and Sunday, lots of sunshine. We're in the 60s to near 70.
Not bad at all.
We'll take the weekend.
All right. Thanks, Glenn. Mike Catalan is here with the check on sports.
Yeah, Glenn talks about Sunday. That's when the Bills have their home opener at the Ralph against the Raiders. Last night we got a chance to see the Oakland Raiders team, and we saw a record-tying kick. Sebastian Janikowski, a 63-yard field goal, tied Tom Dempsey and Jason Elam's for the longest in the history of the league. And the Raiders can run the ball. Darren McFadden getting close to the end zone here. The Raiders went on to win. Sunday they play a Bills team that's trying to keep its own first win in perspective.
Oh, without a doubt. You got to be confident in yourself and know what we're capable of as a team. But, by no means that we win the Super Bowl yesterday. So we got to keep coming in and work and prepare every week like we did last week and, continue to stockpile wins.
Second-year wide receiver Marcus Easley is going to miss the entire season again. This time the Bills have put him on injury reserve due to an illness. They're not being more specific than that. Easley missed all of last year with a knee injury. The team has signed wide receiver Ruvel Martin. Speaking of football, in college, the Courage Bowl is set for Saturday, the annual Fisher U of R game to benefit Camp Good Days. This year it's going to be played at Salem Stadium downtown, and it starts at 7. And in case you missed it, the Yankees late last night got a win in Seattle against King Felix. Felix Hernandez, who usually toys with him, but Mark Teixeira took him out there. The Yankees won last night. They're in Seattle. The Red Sox, meanwhile, Doug, are struggling. They're only 3 games up on Tampa for the wild card.
Yeah, a race.
Yes.
All right, up next, check on our breaking news. Continuing coverage of our breaking news, crews on the scene of an explosion and fire at the Burnwell Propane Company in Mumford. Homes and businesses evacuated for a half-mile radius around the scene. And 13 WHAM's Angela Hong has been there since just really minutes after it all started. Angela, what's the latest now?
Well, Doug, we're told now that the building is pretty much destroyed from what we can see. Now, fire crews are still on the scene, making sure that the remaining propane tanks are kept cool and to make sure that those flames are not rekindled. Now, one worker was injured and he suffered burns to his face and to his arms, but he is expected to be okay. 24 fire companies were on site, and some of them will continue to be on scene here for the next 3 hours, just monitoring this fire. Now, we're told that getting water was the most difficult part of this operation, and it had to be pumped from a nearby creek. But one thing that's very interesting is that the Mumford Fire Chief told us that they had been planning for something like this for several years. They've held several drills just in case this propane plant were to ever blow up, to ever explode, and it may just be the thing that prevented more injuries from occurring. Doug?
Yeah, it seems they did a great job of limiting it to the property, and again, one injury there today. Angela, thanks. We'll be right back.
And thank you for joining us for all the news tonight. As I said 40 years ago, this is Don Alhart reporting from Attica.